Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be back with today's guest, but first, let's hear from our podcast sponsors that make it all possible. We want to thank Violet Defense for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Violet Defense is dedicated to protecting our world from germs by bringing the power of UV disinfection to everyday spaces. Their patented technology enables them to harness the power of the sun to incorporate ultraviolet light into products and environments like never before. Whether you're ready to implement some of their existing products, or if you'd like to explore researching and developing a custom deployment of their technology for your school, Violet Defense has the solutions and the experience you need. Go to violetdefense.com to check out some of their impressive products that you can use at your school. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive for their support of the podcast. You know, it's becoming harder and harder to fund an athletic department these days, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year, while also creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they are on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They provide a variety of interactive touchscreen video consoles, along with an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history, along with your proudest moments, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com or learn more and get started with your own digital Wall of Fame tribute. Call them at 614-981-3589, or you can email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. We also want to thank Huddle for their support. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Over 180,000 teams, including some of the best in the world, use Huddle to help their athletes and their teams play better. Huddle is the complete performance platform. They have online tools, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras like the Huddle Focus. Of course, there's analytics and a whole lot more. Huddle's built for every level of play, from club and youth teams all the way through high school and college programs, and even the professional ranks are using Huddle to help their athletes play better. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes, a lot of their parents, and the coaches of the teams you're trying to get to recruit your kids. If you want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. We also want to thank Athletic Surveys for their support. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also puts you in touch with the 95% of the parents and the student athletes who really love your program. And it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of the parents and the student athletes in your program, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic department from good to great. And we want to say thank you to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can learn more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your program by going to hometownticketing.com. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We are going to the great state of Alaska for the very first time, and we're going to visit with Sandi Wagner. Sandi is a certified athletic administrator. She's a longtime athletic director in the state of Alaska, and she's currently an associate director with the Alaska School Activities Association. Also very active nationally. She's the NIAAA liaison for the state of Alaska. Sandi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well,
not sure what information I can give you, but we're here to move forward. So,
well, we're looking forward to it. I want to give acknowledgement to our mutual friend, Rich Barton from Utah, for connecting us at the recent NIAAA conference in Denver. So, Rich, if you're listening, thanks for doing this. Sandi, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So tell them a little bit about yourself, where you were born, where you grew up and went to school, and maybe how your path has led you now to your current position in Alaska.
Okay, well, I was born and raised in Washington, attended high school in Mercer Island, attended the University of Washington, got my degree, my undergraduate and my master's from my husband got a job in Juneau, Alaska. And I was like, okay, well, we'll move to Juneau, Alaska. And that was not the track I was on at being an educator. I was the director of a cardiac rehab program at the time. So I do have a medical background also. Anyway, moving to Juneau, found that there wasn't a lot other than education. So I got into education and spent 31 years in the school district down there. I was the AD for 26 years, I think. Coached volleyball, coached soccer, did a little bit of coaching of basketball, taught classes. Juneau's small enough that you do anything and everything that you're assigned. And so I did it all. Then I got, after 31 years of being in the district, a position opened up, a Alaska School Activities Association, and I've been here. This is going on my 6th year. So we're running all the state tournaments and I love it.
For someone that's not familiar, with your background, you certainly have, tremendous number of accomplishments. Take us back to some of those early days when you made that transition into athletic administration. What were some of the challenges? What were some of the differences from, what an AD might experience now?
Oh boy. Well, the main reason I got into being the athletic director was the lady that was doing it stepped down, and she stepped down in July, and we had activities starting in first day of August. And so my principal, who was a huge proponent of activities, I can't tell you how much easier that made my job, because I know there's ADs that have admin that don't really support them, but 100%, he attended every game he could. He attended every event. Anyway, he came to me and he said, you have an athletic background. Would you be the part-time AD for us? And that turned into 26 years of being an AD. So the challenges, Juneau, Alaska is a landlocked. So the only way you can get in and out of Juneau is either by ferry or your own boat or airplane. And so that was probably the biggest challenges that I had, because of course I came from Washington, you drove everywhere, was figuring out how to get teams to and from Juneau to play. And when I took over as an AD, we finally were struggling. School district did not pay for anything. So in the 4 or 5 years, we got to the point where we were no longer struggling. We had money in the bank, and we were raising well over $1 million every year so that we could keep our activities going. And that was 100% the support of the community. They knew that activities were important. They knew that we had to keep our kids engaged. And so we did. We worked very, very hard to raise $1 million every year. And anything you've ever heard of as far as fundraising, we do it. Nobody can tell me that there's a new way to fundraise because I've done it all. So anyway, yeah, that's the biggest challenge was the travel and getting teams to come to Juneau and getting my teams out of Juneau and letting them play. And our play schedule is so different than anybody else's. We would get on a ferry on a Thursday morning. We would end up 18 hours later in the community we were going to play in. We would play, we would play games Friday. We would play games Saturday. We'd get back on the ferry Sunday morning, and we'd end up back at school on Monday morning. And that was just a very standard practice for us. And, you know, most people don't play soccer games back to back. When anytime we traveled, we'd play a minimum of 3 soccer games in a row. And same with basketball, same with all of our sports, but those were kind of the ones that were the biggest challenge because people didn't want to play back-to-back games with us. So anyway.
Just fascinating stuff. My mind is racing. There's about 10 different questions I want to ask. You know, you grew up in Washington, as I did, you know, Southwest Washington. I think when people hear Alaska, at least for me, I think the stereotype is, you know, it's winter, 365 degrees or days a year, and it's you know, there's you know, what kind of weather challenges did you have in Juneau? I know that's a little bit southern Alaska, but it's not like it's you know, Florida for me. You know, what kind of weather challenges did you experience as an AD?
Well, again, Southeast Alaska is definitely different. We get snow during the winter, but nothing like we get up here in Anchorage or in Fairbanks. And we didn't get the bitter cold, but winds, high winds, you know, if there were high winds, planes didn't fly, ferries didn't run. So those were definitely challenges. And then, you know, playing outside and track, softball, there's a lot of times where we played in weather that nobody in the lower 48 would ever consider. You know, we're pouring down rain and we've got gusts of winds up to 30 and 40 miles an hour. We're still playing because once the team gets there, you're not sending them away without a game. And so, you know, the officials, the kids, we learn to play through it, and safety is a huge issue. We always would not play if safety was a concern, but again, games that we canceled down in Washington, we didn't even come close to canceling in Alaska.
I guess that concept of toughness, you know, probably came up a little bit.
Yeah.
Very, very cool stuff. For our listeners, we're visiting with Sandi Wagner, longtime athletic director in the state of Alaska, and currently an associate director with the Alaska School Activities Association. We're going to be back with some more, but let's take a quick break and hear from one of our podcast sponsors. We want to thank Huddle for their support of the Educational AD podcast. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Over 180,000 teams, including some of the best in the world, use Huddle to help their athletes and their teams play better. Huddle's the complete performance platform. They have online tools, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras like the Huddle Focus. Of course, there's analytics and a whole lot more. Huddle's built for every level of play, from club and youth teams up through high schools and colleges, and even professional programs use Huddle to help their teams play better. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes, a lot of their parents, and the coaches of the teams you're trying to get to recruit your kids. If you want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and your program, or how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. We're back with Sandi Wagner, Certified Athletic Administrator and Associate Director for the Alaska School Activities Association. Sandi, we always ask our guests about the mentors that they've had in their life. None of us got here on our own. So who are some of the folks that helped you along the way? The expression I like to use is, I still hear those voices in my head. So whose voice do you still hear?
Probably the main one is a gentleman by the name of Ron Gleason. He was my principal that hired me to come on as a part-time AD. The gentleman that I said 100% supported activities. And there's no way I would be where I am right now without him. He taught me what it meant to be an AD. He gave me the rope or the reins to do what I wanted, but with his support. My heart goes out to some ADs when I hear that they do not have support of their administration, or that their administration doesn't really care what they do, because that's not the way it should be. And after Ron, I think he was my principal when I was the AD for about 6 years, maybe not quite that long. I had lots of other principals, but him by far and away was the biggest support I had, and trained and let me know what needed to be done. In Alaska, we have 6 regions, and all of these regions are based basically on geography. So in our region where Juneau was, there's about 19, 20 schools, and they go from the 1A level, which is any school that has less than 50 kids in it, which is kind of unheard of anyplace else. And then to the largest schools, which was Juneau at about 1,200 at the time. And there was a gentleman that was the president of that region for a few years by the name of Dave Dirksen, that also was a huge mentor. I sat on that board for 26 years. I was the president for 14 years. And again, he kind of showed me and taught me what it was like for these small schools, because we worked with small schools. I know in a lot of states, if you're a 5A school, you really don't even associate with your B schools or your 1A schools. Well, that's not the case in Alaska. We work with them, we play against them, and what happens in small villages is entirely different than what happens in our big schools. And so he mentored me to the point where I felt like coming to the Alaska Activities Association, I knew what it was like to work in the village schools, and I knew what it was like to work in the large schools. And so I had the experience of all of them.
Yeah, I had the privilege of working in some smaller schools over my career. And, there's just so many different things that you end up doing as an AD in those small schools, that at a larger school, you've got that support staff that's going to take care of some of those things for you. So absolutely, that small school experience is invaluable. Sandi, again, you and I have been in the profession for a number of years, but we have a lot of younger listeners to the podcast. And I think it's important to talk about the journey that we all take, getting involved with our state association, and then hopefully getting involved at the national level. So share that a little bit. How'd you first get involved at the state level, and how did that develop into your involvement with NIAAA?
How did I first get involved? Well, again, I took over as an AD with nobody else there. And in our region, every school has one person that sits on the board, and that was me. And so that's kind of how I got started with that. I got a passion for being an athletic director and helping kids in all activities. It was interesting that you kind of move around and talk with different kids, and there'd be groups that say, well, you guys don't support us. It's, well, time out. Yeah, I do. I support every kid in every activity, and it doesn't matter if it's music, because we do activities also. As an AD, I did all the activities. I was in charge of our music department. I was in charge of the drama, debate, and forensics. I was in charge of world language. So academic decathlon, a lot of states, that's only the athletic director, but not where I am. We do it all. And so getting involved and making sure that every single coach, every single advisor knew that they were valued, and what they were doing with their kids was valued. And I think my biggest challenge when I first started was getting equity kind of across the board. We didn't give cheerleaders any gym time. And I said, no, that's not right. They're athletes, they need gym time. So we need to figure out a way to get them gym time. same with our dance team. They didn't ever get any time. You know, boys always had the prime practice times. And I said, no, we're not doing it that way. We're going to make it equitable across the board. There wasn't a lot of, and I'm dating myself, but there wasn't a lot of females involved in athletics at that time other than as coaches. And so I don't ever feel it was a hurdle. And I felt like I could communicate with everybody and we did fine, but yeah, those were, I don't know if I answered you. I kind of got sidetracked, sorry.
No, it's a great point. I think if that team, whatever that team is, and you mentioned, you know, cheer and dance, you know, now a lot of schools are having esports teams.
Yep.
You know, if they're a team, if they're representing the school, they have that name across their jersey or their jacket. Hey, you need to take care of them. They need to be just as important as, you know, those other teams that maybe have a bigger following. So, you know, very valuable point. We're going to do this at the end of the podcast, but if one of our listeners wanted to reach out and pick your brain a little bit more, what's the best way that they can reach out and get in contact with you?
Well, probably, either email or phone. I will admit up front, social media, not my thing at all whatsoever. I'm lucky if I answer my phone when it rings. So I have no problem with them calling me, but probably first contact would be email. And then we would go from there. So
Okay.
that's the best for me, because that's about the only thing I do that's electronic.
Okay. And Sandi's email contact information, it's on the NIAAA portal. If you haven't been to the portal, you need to go there. You know, just type in Sandi Wagner and, you know, her email address will pop up. We are visiting with Sandi Wagner, Certified Athletic Administrator. She's an Associate Director with the Alaska School Activities Association. We're going to be back with some more. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs for their support. You know, Wall of Fame is on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They provide a variety of interactive touchscreen video consoles, along with an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For more ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history, along with your proudest moments, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com or learn more and get started with your own digital Wall of Fame tribute. Call them at 614-981-3589, or you can email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. You really need to check out their tremendous products. Welcome back. We're visiting with Sandi Wagner, Certified Athletic Administrator, Associate Director for the Alaska School Activities Association, and longtime AD in the state of Alaska. Sandi, one of the things we try to do with this podcast is the idea of sharing best practices, you know, tips that are going to help all ADs. So looking back over your long career, what are some best practices that you can share? Maybe things that you saw at another school, or even initiatives that you might have started at one of your schools. Do you have anything you can share with us?
Yeah, I think probably the thing that I learned after 2 or 3 years is doing very formal evaluations on my coaches was not very successful. I found that if I attended practice, even if it was just walking through the gym on a regular basis, I would try to get to every team at least twice a week. And again, I didn't necessarily spend much time there, but they knew I was there. They knew things were present. The coaches knew they could contact me. And then if I saw anything, I would sit down and meet with the coaches, but, you know, and things that they needed to work on. That to me, we started with a very formal evaluations, you know, where you sit down and you go through everything. And for me going to their practices on a regular basis, which was much more effective, because that's, I guess, the way I communicate, and that I work best, was more informal than formal. And so for me, that was a great practice. I yeah.
Everybody's got to find the style that works for them, but that's exactly what I did. I just hated that long checklist, district generated document. Just going and watching them, talking with them periodically, hey, how's it going? Or, hey, I noticed the other day, you were, yelling at Billy or something, did that work out? And then at the end of the season, asking them, what do you think you need to improve on, or what would you like to improve on, and trying to, make it more personal, more collaborative. If there was, as I always told the coaches, if we were not going to renew you, you knew well before that meeting at the end of the season. It's stuff that we had already talked about, and it just wasn't working out. It didn't happen a lot, but I really, like what you shared about, just seeing them at practice and talking to them. Okay.
You and I are very similar in that regards, because I would do the same thing, have a communication with them at the end, but it was all about them communicating with me and what I help them with and how to make their lives easier, along with them becoming better. So, and the other kind of best practice that made a huge difference for me is I instituted a, what do I want to call it? Independent learning class, where I would have kids come in one period, it depended on the kids, and they were my assistants, and they learned how to run a basketball tournament. They learned what needed to be done to run a volleyball tournament. Anyway, that was huge because I didn't have anybody else. It was me running all 26 sports. And so getting the kids involved and getting them credit to learn how to be an AD that was a huge step for us. And I don't know if they're still doing it down there, but that made all the difference in the world. That was another best practice. It took me a few years to get it through to our school that they would approve giving credit to kids, but I could show them that these kids put in more time and more hours and learned more in, one semester than a lot of kids learn in 5 semesters of the same class. So that was another kind of best practice for me.
Boy, and that's another one that I used. I was never able to get the credit component through my schools, but we did provide those kids with service hours, because you're absolutely right. The time that they invested in helping the athletic department, it really was a lifesaver. Going back to that idea of, small schools where you're trying to do everything. Very cool stuff.
Yeah.
Again, for our listeners, we're visiting with Sandi Wagner, certified athletic administrator, longtime AD in the state of Alaska. We're going to be back with some more. Let's take another quick break and hear from another podcast sponsor. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thank you to Violet Defense for their support. Violet Defense is dedicated to protecting our world from germs by bringing the power of UV disinfection to everyday spaces. Their patented technology enables them to harness the power of the sun to incorporate ultraviolet light into products and environments like never before. Whether you're ready to implement existing products, or if you'd like to explore researching and developing a custom deployment of their technology for your school, Violet Defense has the solutions and the experience you need. Thanks again to Violet Defense for their support of the podcast, and go to violetdefense.com for more information. We're back with our interview with Sandi Wagner, certified athletic administrator. Sandi, we've always asked our athletic directors this question about how can an AD do a better job these days of being socially aware for their students, for the coaches, for the community. Do you have any advice for us?
I don't know if I have any new advice or anything that's completely different, but in Alaska, of course, we have a very large, I don't want to call it native population, so that's not politically correct right now, but we do. And that was always something I had to be very aware of from the first day that I started. And what I found worked really well was we put a group together, I guess you could call it a board, an activities committee that included, females. It included the native population. It included as many different kinds of people that we could, and listen to what they had to say. And that to me helped us figure out what was going on. And then I'd take that information to our region, and we'd talk about the issues that were happening in the region. We were not getting, the smaller schools weren't getting what they needed. And that to me was the thing that worked the best, is just putting a group together of people concerned or interested people in your community to talk about activities and what you can do and how you move forward and what's not working. And I also believe that was one of the main ways we were able to raise $1 million, is because we got the community involved. It was not us just telling them what was happening. It was them telling us what they needed and how we could make things better and how we could, support every group out there. So that's what worked for us.
Oh yeah, it sounds like, just a great combination of, communication and collaboration, reaching out, listening to the students, getting their input and letting them be part of the process.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Sandi, this has been really cool connecting with you. Again, I want to give a big shout out to Rich Barton for connecting us.
Oh,
but
yeah.
We're not done yet. Okay.
Okay.
We always like to wrap up with what we call the athletic director's toolbox. We've already established that you're certainly a veteran athletic director, but in a moment, I'm going to task you with sending out a brand new AD on the very first job. But I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. We're going to take a quick break and hear from Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack that sponsor our segment. And then we're going to come back and find out what Sandi Wagner is going to put in her athletic director toolbox. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment. Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic department. Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack also connects you to the 95% of the parents and the student athletes who really love your program. And it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Well, it's that time. We're visiting with Sandi Wagner, Certified Athletic Administrator, longtime AD for the state of Alaska. Sandi, I'm going to task you with sending out a brand new AD, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. What 3 items are going to go in Sandi Wagner's Athletic Director toolbox?
This is a tough question because when I started, the toolbox looked entirely different than it looks now. You didn't have all the social media and all the communication skills and tools. And so what would I put in my toolbox? I think the very first thing that I would tell them is to be open and upfront with your coaches and your school administrator. Again, I used to meet with my administrator at least once a week, so he knew what was going on, where we were at, what I wanted to do. There was never any surprises. I think that's huge, that you are with your administrator on a regular basis and they know what's going on. The second thing is, don't let your coaches feel like they're on an island by themselves. They need to know you support them. They need to know that you back them, and they need to know tools that you need to give them, tools that help them get through, coaching, because low on coaches in this part of the country. I mean, right now across the country, we are low on coaches, and anything you can do to support them. I used to have I had a coach's handbook, and of course it had all the stuff that they had to do, but it also gave tools on what to do. How do you handle the parent that's being obnoxious? How do you handle it when a game gets canceled or a practice gets canceled? And so I would 100% make sure you have a coaching handbook that what they need to do, but also what they can do to make coaching a great thing for them to do. I mean, I loved coaching. I was very sad when I had to give it up. But that's not the experience all coaches have. So you've got to give them the tools, and the handbook worked actually for me very well. Okay, that's 2. Third, I think the third one is networking. You need to network. And with COVID, it's been a little tough to go out and network with people. Zoom meetings, yuck, I hate them. But it's one way to network when you can't meet with them. Going to the NIAAA conference, going to your region meetings, you got to network. Getting support from the other ADs is huge. I know that when I first started as an AD, nobody knew me, so it was kind of like, we don't necessarily need to work with her. But the time I was done, I knew almost every AD in the state and was willing to work with them, and they were willing to work with me, and it was a give and take. And it was just all about networking and getting to know everyone. And I know in most states, getting to know every AD would be a little difficult, but it worked for me. Communicating with them, letting them know that I'm the new AD and here I am, and what do you need from me and what can I do? So those would be my 3 tools.
Sandi, thanks so much for sharing those tools. I'm so glad that you talked about, networking. It is so important, particularly for that younger AD and even a veteran AD, just, adding to that network of people that are out there that can help them. Speaking of that, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out and pick your brain a little bit, what's your email address? How can they reach out and get a hold of you?
Very simple. It's Sandi, SANDI, at ASAA.org.
Wow, that is very simple. And that's, Alaska School Activities Association. Sandi Wagner, thanks so much for being on the Educational AD podcast today.
You bet. I enjoyed it, actually. So that was good.
All right. Well, I'll consider that high praise. For our listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of these interviews are uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening today. Come back again next time for another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. And we also want to say thank you to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can learn more at hometownticketing.com. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing.